the things. My friend's mom, she got gun. I hear that. I love it. Because she got a kiln and a baby. Hello, I'm back. If you're new here, my name is Tova and I make pottery. I'm a clay instructor, and so this weekend I went to the clay store and I haven't been in a really long time. So it was just an opportunity to replenish some minerals and some items that I've been missing. And I overheard a conversation where someone was talking about tariffs, and I was like, why are we talking about tariffs at the clay store? And they're like, oh, honey, you are going to be impacted. And it was kind of a shock and like, oh yeah, like this completely makes sense. Pottery wheels, shimpo, rare earth minerals, and I just kind of have been glazed over it, no pun intended. And I actually thought we should talk about this. I don't know if people are talking about this enough, that the tariffs that will impact the pottery industry and any creative makers out there. So I figured we can talk about the tariffs and what I got at the store, and kind of even do a bit of cost analysis on the price of goods within the pottery industry, and what we should actually learn and try to understand with how pottery works and where our supplies actually come from. All right, so let's get started. But first, I'm gonna grab my inventory list. Really heavy. There's some clay in my box of goods that I got at the clay store. My car actually hasn't been working, and I haven't fixed it. And it's actually saved me a lot of money from just randomly going to the clay store and buying things. So this wasn't a haul in no way or form. This was I wrote down an inventory of everything I had, in recognizing that I don't have access to get to this store and having the opportunity to get there this time. I made a list of everything I needed, and it was actually insightful to see. And I actually want to talk about the price of goods, and so I figured we could actually look at my receipt. I also pulled up my receipt from the last time I went there, try to understand the price of minerals. But first, before we get into that, I wanted to highlight and recommend an article that was actually just recently published on the New York Times this week, and it's called How China Took Over the World's Rare Earths Industry. And I'm not going to go through all of it, but it's worth noting that China controls over 99% of the earth rare minerals, specifically into this one talks about magnets. And if you can recollect that Nevada, California had this period of a gold rush back in the day. And during that time period, there was a lot of mining going on in California. There's asbestos mine. There's actually ghost towns that you could find in California of where a lot of mining happened. And then over the years, there's been a lot of regulations and recognizing environmental hazards. So a lot of those mines have been shut down. They actually said that there was one mine that was left, Mountain Pass, California, that was mining these same rare earth minerals. But it was actually shut down in close to 2002. And just recently, they started ramping up again, and just recognizing that the United States doesn't have any skin in the game at this moment as far as having some sort of global supply power in the rare earth space. They said that because of zoning and environmental issues, it can take up to 29 years to build a mining plant. So that's worth noting, that we can't just jump back in, even with these tariffs happening, and say that we can use our own minerals. If China has been controlling a bit of this, the supply demand in this space, then even if we got started now, it would take a long time for us to have some sort of comparison to them. So I think it's worth noting that some products are made in the United States, but actually some of those materials that make those products are still made abroad in different countries. So regardless, we're impacted. And if a product, let's say, is fully made in the United States, who's to say they wouldn't actually raise their prices anyway, just to jump on the bandwagon and raise their prices just like everyone else. So there's some just things that we should note. I was looking at Reddit this morning, and I read something in the pottery thread, affected by tariffs, question mark. Some person said fruits are made in Mexico. Mahavir, I think is how you say it, is from India. Cobalt and copper are from Africa. Potassium feldspar is not mined in the US anymore. Yeah, Custer feldspar hasn't been mined in the US, and I actually found a bag. When I was doing my inventory, I have a very large bag of Custer. Nephsite comes from Canada. This person also says frits are made in Mexico. Metal oxides are pretty much made everywhere. Someone was asking, I don't see how clay and glazes would be affected. And another person was like, expect prices and increases to affect pretty much any American-made material. And if you are like a potterist or a hobbyist who has been investing in making your own supplies, or maybe if you're not even close to a clay store, you're probably trying to figure out where do you get your supply of goods from. So just expect that those prices are going to go up. And so now is a great time to learn about the different suppliers out there and maybe find solutions and substitutes. And this kind of just brings me back to that conversation that I had in the store. What they said was with the Shimpo wheels, Shimpo is a pretty popular pottery wheel that's used in America, especially at studios. It's Shimpo Light, it's used a lot at the studios, and Shimpo Whispers, it's like a higher quality of the Shimpo brand. But it's not to say that Shimpo is the best brand out there, even though it's pretty popular. It's just that it's pretty good for the price. And so there are other ones out there, and I'm kind of curious if you know of any other brands that are reasonably priced. I heard there's also a brand in New York. I want to maybe look into this a bit more, but if you're starting a studio, this is a really tough time to consider to buy your inventory. And it was worth noting that supply shop that I went to, we're just worried about like if they buy more, knowing that like, hey, let's say a wheel costs $1,800. If they buy more, are they going to be stalled at imports and customs or wherever it gets stalled at? So if they only have 5 on the floor, that's all they have for Northern California. Yeah, it's kind of worth noting that pottery wheels will be impacted in the United States, and let's say you don't have a Chinese-made wheel, the motors in the pottery wheel most likely are probably from China as well. And then just going back to all the minerals, and so like anything that's a glaze, like I actually showed a video where I made my glazes from scratch, and so you could see me use a few minerals. Most of those minerals come from different places. So we got the frit. Someone mentioned Mexico. Let's look at the listing price of frit. Ferrofrit $31.34 for a pound is $4.25. The Ferrofrit $31.24 is $3.75. So that's a reasonable cost. Mahavir feldspar $2.99 a pound, and silica a pound $2.99. So all of the main ingredients, willistonite also $2.99, bentonite $2.99. Great. Okay. Where it gets expensive, lithium, of course, is expensive. And if you're not under a rock, you may know that lithium is used in EV, in battery storage parts, and your phones that you use. It's also used in AI. So the demand of lithium is crazy. And I learned a bit more about lithium from this book, Atlas of AI. The first chapter, she talks about the earth. On page 24, she talks about how, so in Nevada, there's this town called Silver Peak that has about 125 people that live in it. And it's a mining town, and it was abandoned in 1917 and it was stripped from silver and gold. So Silver Peak is actually perched on top of a lake of lithium. And so it's pretty valuable. And so now they're mining that again. And so if you've ever like flown across like desert land or Nevada area and you see these like different color grounds like greens, oranges, note that those are probably mining areas. And they said that From miles away, the pond can be seen when they catch the light and shimmer. So here's a remote pocket of Nevada where the stuff of AI is made. All right, so back to the price of lithium. Lithium cost me for a quarter of a pound bag, it's $8. So if you remember earlier I said it was a pound of frit for $2.99. Some of the other ones were $2.99. A quarter of a pound of lithium is $8. Also, crazy, nickel oxide. Oh, by the way, I should mention I use lithium to make a very vibrant bluish green. And this is that quarter pound of lithium. Small. I have more to share about lithium. So lithium actually starts to melt in flux at 1400 degrees Fahrenheit. So lithium has a strong color response and creates really beautiful, vibrant colors. You don't need much, but like since it has such a strong response, it starts to shiver. It starts to shiver at low viscosity. So also nickel oxide black right here was even more than lithium. And so I was curious, like, what's going on with this? Like, is there a shortage in supply, or is there or a large demand of nickel oxide black? And the price of this for a quarter pound was $18. So that's more than twice the amount of lithium. So let's figure out what is nickel oxide also used for, and then also in pottery. Give me a second. I was actually going to use this. I just needed a very tiny amount to get to 2 grams. So this will last me a really long time. But I was going to try to do a recipe in the mid-range glaze book, John's Nickel Yellow. So it's right here. I really loved the kind of shimmeriness that happened in it. Crazy that also I used black nickel oxide. So let's see. So in general, nickel oxide is a colorant. It's not a main ingredient, but it melts at a very high temperature at around like 3100 degrees Fahrenheit. And it is used to make browns, yellows, grays, blues, I think. Yeah. And it's used to make a crystalline glaze. That's it. That's how you get that shimmeriness. Nickel oxide. It's also used in black glazes and stains for strong black colors. And if you notice that test that I showed you was a bit runny. So apparently this mineral tends to run a bit, which I actually kind of liked. I like that drippiness sometimes. And something to note, it's also very toxic. Okay, I also got some colorants, and if you remember the last time when I created that recipe from scratch and I wanted to add a colorant to it, I added Wedgwood, which I don't have it here, but I decided to get a different color this time because Wedgwood was $10 for a quarter pound. Yeah, so that's a lot. Let's look up Wedgwood. I see. Wedgwood is cobalt. Cobalt silicate blue olivine. An inorganic pigment. Okay. One thing also to note about cobalt is that it's usually unethically sourced, and there's a lot of exploitation within cobalt. So that's something to know as far as even just thinking about some of the minerals that you get and where it comes from. Let's look at what cobalt does within the pottery glaze process. So cobalt oxide is a colorant again, and you only need a little bit. I used a lot. I used 4 grams, I think, in that sample that I tested. And so it came out a very dark, deep navy color. So you only need like a half a gram to even get the color blue. So that's something to know when you are testing. I could even started like with a half or 1 gram to start and started adding more along the process. Cobalt oxide is approximately 1.4 times as strong as cobalt carbonate, and sometimes it causes speckling, but as a cobalt carbonate, it usually produces a very even blue color. Okay. So that's interesting to know. Let's look at the part about minerals. What else is it used for? Is it something that we should be concerned about within tariffs? In this book, it says the life cycle of an AI system from birth to death has many fractal supply chains, forms of exploitation of human labor and natural resources, and massive concentrations of corporate and geopolitical power. Okay, here we are today. The richest sites of lithium in the world still have ongoing political tension, as well as places like Central Congo, Mongolia, Indonesia, Western Australian deserts. Later on, it says critical minerals include the rare earth elements dysprosium and neodymium, cobalt, which improves performance for lithium-ion batteries. I see. The Republic of the Congo now has a reporting requirement to track where minerals come from. However, just this learning, it's acknowledging that there is this ignorance of we get these things and we don't even know where they come from or how they're being made. So it is worth trying to understand, is the thing I'm trying to create to get this beautiful color pottery piece or this phone actually something that is fully making me feel good, like intentionally knowing that I'm possibly exploiting a different country for their resources and minerals and even just environmental, like there's just this whole slew of things. So this is just something to think about when you are buying goods, and maybe it's even worth thinking, for me at least, instead of buying Wedgwood, how can I get maybe another color? I got another color, vivid blue, but it's worth even recognizing, is blue worth getting? Like, should I maybe consider another mineral, or like how can we do this more ethically? Okay, so I do want to show you some of the other things I got too. I got copper carb. Wait, let's just see the price of that really quick. Copper carb was $4.29. And if you remember what I said earlier about copper carbonate, Wedgwood, that cobalt oxide is a bit stronger. I also got talc. I got Tennessee ball, which I know is from Tennessee. I don't know if it fully is sourced from Tennessee. There's also Kentucky ball, and this is pretty much ball of clay. And I got barium carbonate, which I actually wanted to create like a very beautiful satin matte black color. Nephsite, which is used in a lot of different materials. I was hoping to use it for, let's see. Oh, I was hoping you use it for that very vibrant blue-green colors that I want to make. And then of course I have this massive bag of clay, which I'm not going to take out. But yeah, so got a lot of things. And what I was really doing was I was recognizing that I was buying a lot of fun, new, trendy glazes. But after doing a whole inventory of my collection, I have enough to actually make any color I want to. I was just missing a few different pieces that could round out the collection. So I do feel like I have enough to be able to not go to the store for a while, and even just recognizing that I did my taxes. This was not a haul at all. There are no hauls after you just do your taxes and forced to cry into a hole. So, I mean, it's reality check on life, and it is worth something to note, like, as far as the price of goods going up in pottery, that I do think creators in ceramicists should raise their prices. Also recognize that, like, let's say you're doing an installation or something, maybe you have to submit your price of goods beforehand. And if the price of goods are going up, let's say every 30 days, it might be worth putting some sort of contingency in there at a percentage to cover those costs, so you're not at a loss out of pocket. I will note for my line sheets that I give to vendors to put my pieces on consignment, I will let them know that these prices are only accurate for the next 30 days, and I plan to update my line sheet depending on the price of goods. And so I think it's definitely worth trying to educate ourselves around, have to say it, AI, yes, tariffs, minerals. It's all part of the pottery process, and if you love pottery so much, it's worth kind of understanding what the things that you're using it and what they mean for the pottery experience, but what they mean for the rest of the world, and maybe even environmental and political, geopolitical, and ethical impacts that they have. Okay, so I will stop there because I just kind of went on a whirlwind of like talking about a lot of different things, but I hope this was helpful. This is actually something I talk a bit in my nonprofit, which does provide AI and tech literacy to give people a better understanding of just how to be more informed about the decisions they make as a consumer. And so let me know if you are interested in this, in particular to pottery, and I would be happy to share more with you. All right, have a good day. I'll see you soon. Bye.